Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. Today we're going to be sitting and yapping about some books, and I'm so excited about it because there's nothing I love more. Obviously, as you can tell from the title, this is going to be my June and July wrap up. I didn't read as many books in June, so I didn't do a dedicated wrap up, but I thought I would combine the two so that I could still give you my thoughts on the books that I read in June. So here we are. In June I read 5 books and in July I read 10, so of course we're going to be talking about all 15 today. In terms of a genre breakdown, I read 6 romance, 5 fiction and 4 fantasy books. And in terms of how well I followed my TBR in each month, out of the 6 books that I had on my TBR in June, I read zero of my TBR books. I know guys, I did not do well. However, I kind of redeemed myself in July because in July, out of the 6 books that I had on my TBR, I read 5. So I made a bit of a comeback. I'm happy with that. And I feel like that's just such a classic depiction of how my TBRs go. Sometimes I literally read none and sometimes I read all of them. You just never know what you're gonna get. And I honestly don't know either a lot of the time. Like, I always think I'm gonna read every book on my TBR and it very rarely happens. But anyway, let's start off with talking about the 5 books that I read in June. The first book that I finished in June was Deep Cuts. I don't know if this is technically classified as romance or just like fiction. I would argue it's more fiction. I wouldn't go into this book looking for a romance because whilst the romance is a big part of it, it just didn't feel like a romance book to me. It definitely felt more like a fiction to me. Anyway, this book is set in the early 2000s and we follow 2 characters who I think meet in college, Joe and Percy, and they both love music but in very different ways. Joe can actually play music, like he has a lot of musical talent. He loves to write songs and perform them. And then we have Percy, who doesn't have any sort of like technical ability when it comes to music. She can't write music, she can't read music, but she has a lot of thoughts and opinions about music. And Joe and Percy's friendship really begins because she starts giving him feedback on some of the music that he's written, and the feedback does wonders for him. And so Joe quickly starts to rely on Percy for this kind of musical feedback and the opinions that she has. It's just very unique the way that Joe and Percy rely on each other, because sometimes it's romantic, sometimes it's platonic. You're just kind of following them throughout their lives and you see how their lives kind of interconnect and then divert and come back together and divert again. I think there were 2 things that really stood out to me about this book. One is that unique relationship that our characters have and the way that they rely on each other, because Joe loves his music so much and he's so proud of it and his identity is in his music. And the whole reason why he kind of goes to Percy is because Percy has so many opinions about his music, so he allows her into this space in his heart and in his brain that is where his deepest part of his identity is, which is his music, and he allows her to critique that, and that is such like a vulnerable thing for him. It's just fascinating to me, and I found that like psychological part of it just so interesting. And then the second thing I loved about this book is that it made me feel nostalgic for a time period that I didn't really live through or experience personally. Like, I was alive in the early 2000s, of course, but I was a child. Like, I wasn't going to clubs, I wasn't going to concerts, I wasn't going through college in the early 2000s, and that is when this book is set. And so reading about them going into these concerts and these bars and also just like walking through the streets of New York and different things, like I could see each scene so clearly in my head, even though I've never experienced those places during that time period, but it just felt nostalgic for me, even though I just have never experienced that. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, more so as like a character study on these 2 characters and like trying to understand how their brain worked rather than being obsessed with the characters as a romance. Like, I didn't think they were great people necessarily, but I found them very interesting to understand, if that makes sense. But we read this for our book club and I think I rated it the highest. So I don't really know if it's one of those books that I would go out of my way to recommend to people because it feels like it has very mixed opinions, but I personally really enjoyed it. Then I picked up The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This was such a good book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think this is adult fantasy and it does have a romance in it as well. But in this book we are following our main character, who we know as Six, and she is a diviner. And as a diviner, she dreams for people, which basically means that as a part of her job, essentially, if she goes through a certain slightly traumatic process, she is able to kind of see the future for people. So that is kind of her job as a diviner, alongside a few other girls who have also kind of committed to being a diviner and giving 10 years of service to this process which they call dreaming. But our main character is coming to the end of her service and then bad things start happening to some of the other diviners. And so Six takes it upon herself to go and find out what is happening and why it is happening. thing. So we're following Six as she embarks on this journey to figure this stuff out, and she reluctantly kind of befriends this knight, and they kind of team up along with a few other characters as well to figure this out, and it's just so much fun. It is very atmospheric. Rachel Gillig just does gothic fantasy so incredibly well. I loved the romance. I loved the storyline. Like, I was genuinely so interested to see how they were going to figure this out and what was going to happen. Like, I personally feel like the plot balanced with the romance was done really, really well. I feel like it sometimes can feel like there's too much romance, not enough plot, or too much plot, not enough romance, but I felt like it was just such a good balance in this book. There were so many funny moments, even though it's quite like a serious and like high stakes situation, and the world building and magic system was fascinating to me. Like, I just thought it was a very well-rounded book, and I definitely recommend it. I'm so excited to see where the series goes, because this definitely ended on a cliffhanger, so I guess there has to be more books. I don't know if it's going to be a duology, trilogy. I haven't like looked into it, but I loved this book. I had a lot of fun with it. I got so attached to the characters and like the little found family moments that they had, and I definitely recommend. Rachel Gillig, I wouldn't say she's like a favorite author because I've only read 3 of her books. I don't know if she has more in her backlist. I need to look into that, but I've read 3 of her books and all of them have been 4 stars or above. I just feel like she writes great books. Like, I really have no complaints, so loved this, definitely recommend. Then I read It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan. This is her newest release, and I was so excited to read this. But in this book, we are following a main character who works in the film industry. She was a child actor, but now she kind of works in more of like the behind the scenes, like production kind of side of things. And she has this like script or screenplay that she really wants to become a movie. And so she pitches it to her team and immediately is like kind of shut down. And so she's really trying hard to kind of make it sound a little bit better than maybe it does sound, to get this approval and make sure it turns into a movie. And in order to do that, she's kind of like, oh, there's this guy that I used to know from when I used to work with him as a child actor, and he has definitely agreed to write a song that could be used for the soundtrack of this movie. And that is the piece of information that kind of gets this movie approved by her team. However, the problem is that guy that she worked with as a child actor, who she has not seen in a very, very long time, has not agreed to do that at all. So then she basically has to go on this adventure, little side quest situation, to go and find this guy and ask him to write a song for this movie so that this screenplay can become a movie and she can kind of cement herself in the career position that she wants to be in, I guess. But along the way, there is a romance that ensues. And of course, since it's Annabelle Monaghan, there's a lot of character development that happens as well. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. It's not my favorite Annabelle Monaghan, but it was definitely still enjoyable. It was good enough to be a 4-star from me because the writing was just incredible. I love Annabelle Monaghan's writing. I love that her writing is not like flowery or like super poetic, but it feels magical. I also think she does really great character development. I also think she writes like settings very well. I can very clearly see all of the scenes and where they're taking place. So there are a lot of great things about this book, but overall I just wasn't obsessed with it in the way that I thought I might be. Like, I know that our main character obviously had to go through some character development, but there were a few things that she did that I was just like, why would you do that? That's such a dumb decision. I did love the parts of the book that were set at the male main character's like family home. I just thought that reading about his family was just so beautiful, and it was so interesting because our female main character is an only child and our male main character comes from quite a large family, and seeing that dynamic was so interesting to me. I really, really liked that as like a piece of the story, even though it definitely wasn't the main part. And there were just a few parts of the story that I wish had a bit more to them. Like, we knew that there was this kind of strange dynamic between the main character and her mum, but we never fully delved into that, and I feel like there was just so much opportunity to do so. I think that would have been such a fascinating part of the story if we had been able to delve into that, because it was hinted at, but it was never fully discussed, and I do not know why. Annabelle Monaghan has said that this book was inspired by Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, and so partly I assume that our main character and her relationship with her mother is partly based on that, and I have read that memoir. I really enjoyed it, but I just feel like, again, there was opportunity to do so much more with that part of the story, and it just felt like that part of the story was like missing. Like, it felt like it should have been there, but it wasn't. But I still did really enjoy it, and I still do recommend it. But yeah, it just didn't feel like Annabelle Monaghan's strongest book to me personally. Next up, we have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This was so freaking good. This was a 4.5-star read from me. I have been so impressed by Carly Fortune's release this year and last year as well. I've loved both of them. They are just like the quintessential summer book, and they do come out in winter here in Australia every year. So I am reading these like summer books in winter, but they still feel so summery to me and they still give me that perfect summer feeling. So if you're looking for a summer book or a beach read or like a holiday vacation read, please pick up this book because it was just the perfect vibes to me. I wish I had read it like on a lake or on a beach or on a vacation of some kind like that. I literally read it on the plane coming home from New York, but I still just loved it so much. In this book, we are following our main character, Alice. She's a photographer, but she kind of feels like she's lacking inspiration recently, and her grandmother has just gone through a surgery and is going through recovery. And so Alice is like, why don't I just take my grandma and we can head to the lake, to this lake house that belongs to a family friend of ours that we did spend some time at growing up, and we can just enjoy ourselves there. Maybe I can get some more inspiration because she has felt inspired at that lake before, and surely it would be nicer for her grandma to recover in like a beautiful space, and maybe it will just kind of bring her back to life a bit because her grandmother is just kind of not herself recently. And so they go to the lake house and Alice very quickly meets Charlie, and he is just the classic like charming, flirty, bantery kind of guy that all the girls fall in love with, and automatically Alice is just like, stay away from me, like I don't want anything to do with you, you are such a flirt, like I'm not falling for that. But Charlie persists, they end up becoming friends, and Alice has written this list, like a summer bucket list essentially, of all the things that she wants to do to make herself feel like she's a teenager again, just like with no responsibilities, no cares in the world. And so her and Charlie decide to tick off this list together, and it's just such a fun story watching them tick off all of these things, and it just feels like they are teenagers again, even though they are in their 30s, I think. And I feel like that is just a feeling that we are all chasing, that like nostalgic summer feeling from when we were teenagers, and I feel like they achieved that in this book. It definitely has some heavier themes that run through it, and you see a lot of character development through both of our main characters as well. But overall it was just so well written. I loved it. It had the perfect amount of like fun and carefree bantery kind of moments, as well as like depth and growth. So yeah, I loved this. I really recommend it. And the last book that I read in June was Anne of Green Gables. I also don't have the physical copy of this, but I read it on my Kindle. It's free on Kindle if any of you are wanting to read it. I just downloaded like the full bind up sort of situation, so I have the whole series on my Kindle, which is so nice. And I ended up reading the first book in June and the second book in July, so I might just talk about them both now. The first book is obviously Anne of Green Gables, and the second book is Anne of Avonlea or Avonlea. I assume Avonlea, but I actually don't know. Ignore my pronunciation if I'm incorrect. But I loved these books so much. I gave Anne of Green Gables 5 stars. 5 stars. It was so good. And then I did give the second book 4 stars, only because it just didn't feel like it had that like same level of whimsy magic to it as the first book did. I think just because the novelty of a few things had worn off, but I still loved the second book. But I do feel like that first book is just magical. Like Anne turning up to Green Gables, being this little orphan girl who finally has a family to live with, and just how happy she is and how utterly likable she is, even though she's like technically like so annoying. You just can't help but fall in love with her because she's so like joyful. It feels so dumb to me to be recommending Anne of Green Gables to you because obviously it's a literal classic, like it's been around for so long, but I just had never read it until now, and I can't believe I didn't read it when I was younger because I would have loved it so much. But yeah, it just feels magical. Like the atmosphere that the author is able to write and just like create in your brain is just so perfect, and I just love Anne's perspective on so many things. She is like the queen of romanticizing her life. So yeah, I loved my reading experience and I cannot wait to continue the series. Moving on to the books that I read in July, starting off with Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh my gosh, so good. This was a 4.5 star read for me. It was so close to being a 5 star. I don't really know why it wasn't. Like it was like so close, but it just wasn't quite there in my head. But Taylor Jenkins Reid has done it again. She has created a masterpiece, and I don't even mind that we had to wait 3 years for a new release from her because this was worth it. And if I have to wait another 3 years, I will be a little bit sad, but I will understand, because if this is the type of stuff that she's writing, take all the time you need, queen. Like, take it. If you don't know what this book is about, we are following Joan, and I think she's an astrophysicist, I want to say, but she's working in a university, kind of teaching some classes, but she's definitely not obsessed with doing that. And then she hears that NASA has opened up this new program and they're looking for people to be a part of it, so she applies and she ends up getting in, and you just follow her through this program that she goes through in Houston and getting trained essentially to be an astronaut. And it's so interesting hearing about the training that she goes through and like how they train you to go into outer space. Like that whole part I found so interesting, but I feel like that's not even like the main part of the book. Like the main part is just like Joan and the relationships that she has. You get to see some really interesting family dynamics. You get to see the friendships that she builds and like the found family family that she creates for herself, as well as her falling in love. But yeah, it's just crazy because if you had told me what this book is about, I don't think I would have picked it up. Like, it doesn't sound that interesting to me. If I was just to like read the back and like read the synopsis, I'd be like, oh yeah, like it sounds good, but it's just like not my thing. But because it was Taylor Jenkins Reid, I was like, obviously I'm going to pick it up. She's one of my favorite authors. I love everything she writes, and I ate up every single sentence on every single page. Like, it was just that good. So even if the storyline and like the plot doesn't sound that interesting to you, please give it a chance. Even if you've never read any TJR before, I recommend. Like, I don't know how she does it, but her writing is just magic and I love it. And this was another book club book for my book club, and we all rated it 5 stars except for me. I rated it 4.5, but that is incredible for us. Like, that is such high ratings from all of us. So even if you don't take my word for it, maybe you'll take my 3 best friends' words for it. So you need to read this. I don't make the rules. You have to. Then I picked up Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. I gave this 4 stars. This is a romance that is very unique to me. It follows Caleb and Sarah. They met and fell in love when they were teenagers, and they ended up getting married really young, and now we are 10 years later. So they've been married for 10 years, maybe over 10 years, either way. They've been married for a long time. They've been together for a long time. And Sarah has just started feeling a little bit lost. She just feels like she's not really done anything with her life. She's never really accomplished anything. She feels like she doesn't really have any dreams or goals or ambitions, and that is really like not sitting well with her, and it's now affecting her relationship with Caleb because she just doesn't really know who she is, so therefore she doesn't really know who she is in this relationship, and she doesn't know if it's the right thing anymore. So they decide to go on this like couples retreat camping trip situation to kind of just like figure themselves out. There's also a bit of a counseling situation that goes on during this camping trip thing as well. Just doing a lot of self-development and self-growth, and honestly that didn't sound that interesting to me, and that's why it took a really long time for me to pick this up. I love Hannah Bonham Young as an author. Out on a Limb is a 5-star read for me, and this is like a spin-off from Out on a Limb. I do recommend reading Out on a Limb first before picking this up because kind of link. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. But like the whole camping thing, I don't know, that storyline just didn't really interest me. But when I realized that it was about a couple who were already together and kind of just like figuring out if they should be together or if they shouldn't, or like who they are as people within a relationship, like that whole scenario really interested me. So I'm really glad that I picked it up. I really enjoyed it. There's also just like so much more to the story than that. Sarah has just like been through a lot in her life, and it makes a lot of sense why she has gotten to the part of her life now without really having any goals or ambitions or like achieving anything, quote unquote, because obviously she's achieved a lot, but in her mind she hasn't. I just really enjoyed that. I feel like it's almost like, yes, it's a romance book, but it's almost more about Sarah's character development, and Caleb's too, but like mostly Sarah's. So I really liked this. I thought it was such a beautiful story and just a really unique take on a romance book. If you just feel like a lot of romance books have been feeling the same to you lately, like they just follow the same structure or the same tropes, and you just are a little bit sick of that kind of formulaic feel, I would recommend this one because it just felt unique to me and I really liked it. Then I picked up Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. This was the only one of Annabelle Monaghan's like backlist that I hadn't read yet, I believe, and so I wanted to pick it up, and I did, and I'm really glad that I read it. It's just like such a short and sweet book, and again, I just love Annabelle Monaghan's writing. I'm not gonna lie, the reason why I hadn't picked up this book yet is because the storyline itself appealed the least to me compared to Annabelle Monaghan's other books, but I love her writing so much, so I was like, I'm gonna read it anyway. But the reason why it didn't appeal very much to me is because we're following our female main character who is engaged to be married, and so she has gone to her like childhood vacation home, which is on Long Island, and she spent every summer there growing up, and she goes back home to kind of plan the wedding. But when she turns up to this Long Island beach house, her neighbor is home, and her neighbor is the boy that she was like in love with her entire childhood, a lot of her teenage years. They had like a teenage romance, and then something happened and they haven't seen each other since. And now it is obviously many years later. She is engaged to be married to someone else, but she is now kind of hit with this reminder of this guy that she was utterly obsessed with when she was a teenager and like never really got closure from. And that storyline just doesn't sit super well with me. I don't like it when one of our main characters has a partner, has a boyfriend, has a girlfriend, has a fiance, has a husband, has a wife, whatever it may be, and that person is not the love interest. It just, I don't like it. I just feel like I can never fully dive into the story because that piece of information is always sitting in the back of my head. So that definitely contributed to me not loving this book more. It definitely, again, sat in the back of my head. I definitely was thinking about it the whole way through the book. But if I can remove that from my brain, I really liked this book. I thought it was beautifully written. I thought the romance was really nice. You get flashbacks to them as teenagers and like falling in love for the first time, which just is so nostalgic, and just like I love a story of first love and like having those feelings for the first time. I think it's just so beautiful. So apart from that, I really liked it, but I just couldn't forget about that completely, which just meant it wasn't a higher rating for me. But I still really like Annabelle Monaghan as a writer, and I can't wait to see what she writes in the future. Then I picked up Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. This is another romance that I would recommend if you're sick of reading really like formulaic romance books which all just feel the same, because this one also felt quite unique to me and felt a little bit just like it focused on different things a little bit in a good way. In this book we are following Lenny, who is grieving the loss of her best friend. Her best friend passed away after being sick for quite a while, and Lenny just like does not know who she is without her best friend. She doesn't know how to like move on with her life, but she's been a nanny for a long time, and so she decides to continue being a nanny, and she gets this new nannying position. And when she arrives there, she meets the girl that she's looking after and the mum, but she also meets the uncle of this girl that she is nannying. And the uncle just very quickly realizes that there's something not right with Lenny, so he kind of questions her a little bit, and he finds out, okay, she's really grieving, she's going through this process. And the uncle, his name is Miles, I probably should have mentioned that. Miles decides that he is going to help Lenny start living again. So they have this little bucket list that Lenny already had of things that she wants to do to try and feel joy again, try and feel happiness again, try and feel a bit like her old self. And so they start ticking off the things on this list together, and it's just such a beautiful story of someone helping someone else through grief. And Miles just has a lot of experience with grief, so he is like the perfect person for this position. And also the romance kind of like comes out of nowhere. Obviously it's a romance book, so you're expecting it to some extent, but Lenny and Miles are just like friends first. Like they are friends for a really long time before it ever becomes romantic, and I love the way that the relationship kind of like flowed and transitioned into these different stages. So if you like a slow burn friends to lovers with a lot of depth and a lot of character development, I definitely recommend this book. It was just so good. I gave it 4.5 stars, by the way. Then I picked up Assistant to the Villain. This was on my 25 books to read in 2025, and I got it from Libby, so I'm glad that I finally picked it up. This is like a cozy fantasy. It's about a girl who needs to support her family, so she becomes assistant to the villain, and within the villain's like kind of like the team that he has working for him, or like his company, I guess, for lack of a better term, there is a rat, there is a snitch, there is someone who is sharing information and like leaking things. So we are following our assistant and the villain as they try and figure out who the rat is, like who the snitch is. So that's kind of like the storyline, but there also is a bit of like a romance going on, which was so much fun. And the whole book is just like fun. It's like a silly, goofy time. I thought it was funny and it made me smile, but I just like never became obsessed with it. So I gave it like 3 stars. Like it was a good book. It wasn't amazing. I don't think I'm gonna continue the series unless I just like randomly get the urge to continue it, but I just feel content with my time spent in this world. I don't feel like I need to continue it, but I can see why people really love it. I thought it was fun. I just didn't really ever feel connected, so I don't think I'll continue it, but it was a good time. Next I read Picking Daisies on Sundays. This really matches my jumper right now and I'm obsessed with that. I love the cover of this book so much, and I love that at the end of this book you kind of find out there's a bit more significance to this cover, which is fun. Anyway, this book is a YA romance set in New York City, and we are following our main character as she runs into her ex-best friend from high school who she was actually in love with. She hasn't seen him in 4 years, and then they randomly bump into each other, and because of a certain situation they end up fake dating, and so obviously because of that they spend a lot of time together, and maybe those feelings come back, maybe they don't, you never know. But this is just a classic rom-com. Like it is like a quintessential romance, like the most romancy romance book you could pick up. I feel like it was full of cliches, but in a good way. I don't mean that in a bad way. It was just like a feel-good classic love story. I just like don't have a lot to say about it because I didn't feel super strongly about it. I enjoyed my time in this world with these characters. I had a good time, just not like a fantastic time, but I really don't have anything bad to say about it. I can see why people love this book because again, it's just such like a feel-good story and just such like a quintessential romance. I gave it like 3.5 stars. It was just like a solid romance. I'm glad that I read it because I've just seen it around for so long and I've been meaning to pick it up for so long, but it just wasn't like life-changing to me. Then lastly, we have the 3 books that I read in my most recent reading vlog, so I won't harp on about these too long. If you want to see my full reading experience, you can watch my most recent reading vlog. But I finally picked up Immortal Dark. This is a dark academia fantasy book following Kadan, who has inherited this house at this boarding school, but in order for her to be able to like actually inherit it and like own this house, she has to live in the house. And it just so happens that a vampire also lives in the house and also has the rights to live in that house, and they are both basically trying to get full ownership of this house. But the only way that the vampire can get full ownership is if Kadan vacates the premise for over 28 days, and she is unwilling to do that. So now she has to live in this house with this vampire until she completes all of her courses at the boarding school, and once she graduates, she will get the house. So there's this very tense dynamic between these two main characters. And I forgot to mention that Kadan's twin sister has gone missing, and they don't know if she's dead or kidnapped or what. And Kadan believes that the vampire that she is now living with is responsible for her twin sister being gone. There is a lot to unpack in this situation, and honestly, I have skimmed the surface as to what the setup of this book even is, but that is like the most concise I feel like I can be. But the magic system and the world building in this book are really interesting, and the dark academia vibe is definitely achieved in this book. Like, it feels dark and ominous and eerie in the most perfect way, and again, it has that academic setting at this boarding school with Kadan going to these classes and learning about humans and vampires and all of the other things. Like, it is just a really interesting book. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was very out of my comfort zone, but I'm glad that I read it, and I definitely want to continue the series because this is the first in a trilogy. Then I picked up Just Last Night by Vari McFarlane. I also gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I said this in my reading vlog, but Vari McFarlane's books are always in the romance section, and I feel like they shouldn't be. I feel like they should just be in like the general fiction section, because in this book and multiple others that I've read by this author, yes, there is a romance, but it doesn't even begin until like halfway through the book. And that was exactly what happened in this book. So if you want a romance book that's more of like a women's fiction book with a subplot of romance, I would recommend this book. But also, this book has a lot of discussion around grief, around death, and all of the things that come along with those topics. So if you don't want to read about grief, if you don't want to read about death, please do not pick up this book, because it is a very prominent theme throughout the entirety of this book, and it is sad. It is a sad book. So do I recommend this book? Like, absolutely. I loved the writing. I loved the romance. The male main character in this book, I really liked him. He was so emotionally intelligent, and I love that in a love interest. But for a lot of this book, I was sad. So do with that what you will. I do think this is one of my favorite Vari McFarlane books. Maybe not my top favorite, but maybe like second favorite for me. And the final book that I have to talk about is Cruel is the Light. This is a YA fantasy book, and it has an enemies to lovers storyline in it as well. It's set in Europe, which was really fun, and the magic system in this book was really interesting. Our main characters are like fighting demons. That is kind of like the whole setup. Our female main character is an exorcist, and our male main character is like a soldier, but he is kind of deserted the army, and they end up kind of having to fake date so that they can achieve what they need to achieve. I enjoyed this. It just wasn't like a favorite for me. It's very high stakes, very action packed. If you're looking for a new YA fantasy book that has an interesting magic system that you haven't seen like 100 times before, I would recommend. But I just never felt fully attached or connected to the characters, and I like just never cared too much about the plot line. But I don't really have anything like super negative to say about it. Like, I don't really know why I didn't love it more than I did. Overall, it was a good book to me. I just don't think it's gonna like stay with me for a super long time, but I still recommend it. I gave this one 3 stars. But those are all of the books that I read in June and July. I feel like I have been talking for so long, but I would love to know, what was your most recent 5-star book? I am very intrigued. I feel like I haven't had a 5-star in a little bit, and I would love to have another one very soon. So give me your recs, please. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.